What if I told you there exists a hidden struggle between shadows and light, playing out right now in a small Eastern European nation? While the spotlight shines on Ukraine, Moldova finds itself ensnared in a web of deceit spun by Vladimir Putin's Kremlin. In this riveting tale, we unravel the layers of Moscow's influence and witness the dramatic clash for Moldova's very soul. Once a part of the Soviet Union, Moldova lies nestled between Ukraine and Romania, bearing the legacy of Russian control. This strategic gem has long suffered under the thumb of Kremlin-backed forces, particularly in Transnistria, a disputed territory that boasts its own currency and anthem, though unrecognized by most. Around 12% of Moldova's land rests under this shadowy control, providing a foothold ripe for exploitation. When the pro-European part of Action and Solidarity, PS, swept the 2021 elections, Putin's plans for dominance suffered a staggering blow. It was a moment of hope for many Moldovans, a sign that light could still pierce through the clouds of manipulation. Fast forward to 2024, and the elections reveal a similar outcome. The pro-Russian candidate, Alexander Stoyanoglu, faced defeat as current President Maya Sandu secured over 55% of the vote, continuing her steadfast pro-European stance. But just as the Moldovan spirit seemed resilient, dark forces stirred once again. With elections looming on September 28, 2024, authorities made a shocking announcement: 74 people arrested for plotting unrest. They had trained in Serbia under Russian guidance, learning tactics for provocations, crowd control, and even how to handle weapons. Imagine the tension in the air as they prepared to unleash chaos on the streets, all for a price €400 per recruit. This sinister operation came to light thanks to Moldova's organized crime prosecutors. Disguised as a religious pilgrimage, many were duped into this dangerous mission. The mastermind? Reports suggest Ilan Shor, a pro-Russian oligarch who once disappeared into the shadows after orchestrating a massive bank fraud scandal, stealing nearly $1 billion in 2014. As investigators conducted over 250 raids across the nation, they uncovered a trove of damning evidence, weapons, camouflage, and communications that connected this scheme to Moldovan politicians. The social media landscape buzzed with chaos as the Kremlin unleashed disinformation to sway public opinion, aiming to fracture the peace and momentum of a pro-European government. Could it be that Moldova serves as a pivotal battleground, not just for its own future, but for the wider region? With the country poised to join the European Union, the stakes have never been higher. President Sandu warns of the Kremlin's intentions to seize control through elections and use Moldova as a pawn against Ukraine. In this gripping saga, the shadow of Russian influence looms large, yet the resilience of the Moldovan people shines brightly. As they prepare for a crucial vote, will they stand strong against the tide of manipulation? Or will history repeat itself, ensnaring them in a web from which there may be no escape? As Moldova grapples with its turbulent past and uncertain future, a shadow looms larger than ever. A disbanded political entity, the SOR Party, once sought to pull the nation towards a union with Russia, its notorious leader, Ilan Shor, currently living quietly in Russia. Yet, his ambitions linger like a dark cloud over Moldova's political landscape. In a shocking revelation, authorities uncovered a covert operation allegedly spearheaded by Andrei Pavlov, linked to Shor himself. This scheme aimed to disrupt the upcoming elections, with communication primarily conducted through Telegram to maintain secrecy. Despite their efforts, Moldovan investigators executed over 250 raids across the country, including in 4 prisons. What they discovered was alarming: a cache of weapons, ammunition, camouflage gear, and forged documents, all signs of a sinister plot to instigate unrest and division among the populace. Even more troubling was the involvement of certain Moldovan political factions. Igor Dodon, leader of the Socialist Party, acknowledged that 4 of his members were among the 74 arrested, facing the potential of 8 years in prison if convicted. This all unfolded alongside significant reports from major news organizations investigating Russia's manipulative hand in Moldova's electoral processes. Notably, the Kremlin had devised an intricate strategy to subvert President Maya Sandu's authority. With Moldova's EU membership application lodged shortly after the outbreak of conflict in Ukraine, the stakes could not be higher. Candidate status was granted in June 2022. And negotiations for accession are well underway. But for Russia, the prospect of Moldova aligning with Europe is a nightmare come to life. Despite President Sandu's focus on European integration by 2030, the Kremlin appears determined to maintain its grip on Moldova, which remains one of the few nations in Europe outside NATO and the EU. What sinister strategies will the Kremlin employ next, and how far will they go to ensure Moldova stays within their orbit? As the tension continues to mount, the nation's future hangs in the balance, teetering on the edge of a political precipice. Will Moldova break free from the influence of its historical oppressors, or will it succumb to their manipulative designs once again? The air is thick with uncertainty, and the clock is ticking. The upcoming elections will be a pivotal moment. Will the people of Moldova stand united, or will chaos reign supreme once more? The answer lies just beyond the horizon. In 2024, shocking revelations surfaced from Moldova's Security and Intelligence Service. An extensive Russian operation aimed to manipulate the nation's presidential election and push its agenda for EU membership. The details were as astonishing as they were grim, revealing a master plan characteristic of Russia's history of deceit and interference. Investigators unearthed a sprawling pyramid structure orchestrated from Moscow, with the Federal Security Service overseeing operations. The Kremlin's main intelligence agency, the successor to the infamous KGB, coordinated a campaign involving financial subterfuge, social manipulation, and relentless disinformation. At the top of this complex web sat Ilan Shor, a notorious figure in Moldova's electoral corruption landscape. This campaign was not a scattered effort, it was meticulously organized. The Moscow Command Center directed various local offices throughout Moldova, all aiming to undermine the electoral process by any means necessary. A staggering report indicated the existence of 119 territorial cells scattered across the country. These local centers encompassed around 1,900 primary units and engaged approximately 33,000 paid activists, working in service of the Kremlin's disruptive goals. These activists received monthly salaries of up to 3,000 Romanian lei, roughly equivalent to $180. Their efforts grew a vast network, swelling to an estimated 80,000 sympathizers. This extensive reach magnified the Kremlin's ability to fabricate stories and skew public perception. Two principal platforms took the lead in this covert campaign: the Evrazia Organization and the Victory Bloc, a coalition of pro-Russian parties. Evrazia, established in April 2024, masqueraded as a non-commercial entity while quietly facilitating Russia's influence. What was next? Would this insidious network disrupt the impending elections? The whispers of chaos were just beginning to stir, as Moldovans braced for an electoral showdown that would redefine their nation's future. Moldova stood at a crossroads. Would they slip back into the Kremlin's grasp, or fight for their sovereignty and the prospect of a brighter, Western-aligned future? The stakes had never been higher, and the outcome remained uncertain, hanging in the balance like a fragile thread. In the shadowy world of political machinations, one question looms large: what if your homeland became the battleground for a larger war, manipulated by unseen hands? The quiet nation of Moldova, sandwiched between Ukraine and Romania, is facing that very threat. Long plagued by the reach of Russian influence, Moldova is on high alert as the Kremlin seeks to tighten its grip on yet another region. Just recently, the Moldovan authorities made a shocking announcement. They revealed the arrest of 74 individuals allegedly preparing for violent upheaval leading up to pivotal elections. Under the guise of a religious pilgrimage, these young recruits were lured to Serbia, where they underwent military-style training. They learned not just about crowd control, but disturbing tactics designed to sow chaos in their own homeland. This revelation is one part of a long-standing Russian strategy that has left Moldova teetering on the edge of instability. Behind this facade of misguided patriotism lies a puppet master, Vladimir Putin. His ambitions echo through history, reminiscent of past totalitarian regimes, seeking to turn Moldova into a tool of aggression against Ukraine. The stakes have never been higher. Since gaining candidate status for European Union membership, Moldova is a strategic prize in a geopolitical game of chess. If Russia manages to install a pro-Kremlin government, it could unleash a new front in an already tumultuous conflict, turning the nation into a staging ground for military incursions into Ukraine. While Moldova's president, Maia Sandu, has thwarted several subversive plots, including the recent arrests, the question remains: how long can she protect her nation against such overwhelming odds? With a history stained by corruption and foreign interference, each election poses a risk not just for Moldova, but for regional stability as a whole. In a tense television broadcast, Sandu warned of the Kremlin's ambitions, emphasizing the profound implications for Ukraine. If successful, Moldova could easily be used against our neighbor to the west. As the election date approaches, the smell of conspiracy hangs heavy in the air. Can Moldova, a country with a resilient spirit, fend off the impending storm? The answer is a race against time. Each fleeting moment brings the possibility of subversion closer as Moldovan citizens prepare to cast their votes in a battle that could define their future, one that extends far beyond their borders. What if a modest country perched between East and West becomes the secret front line of a hidden war of shadows? Earlier we heard how Moldova shields vast swaths of Ukraine, a protective barrier that could flip into a dangerous weapon if Moscow achieves its aims. President Maya Sandu sounded the alarm again, warning that Russia is unleashing a full-scale assault on the upcoming vote. She declared, the Kremlin pours hundreds of millions of euros into a scheme to buy votes on both banks of the Dnistru River and beyond. The air in Chisinau feels heavy with cracked promises, whispers drift like cold wine through market stalls. Hundreds are paid to spark unrest, to spread fear, to ignite violence. If Russia grabs Moldova, will the whole region crumble under its weight? Journalists and EU officials echo her fear. Kaya Kallas wrote, Moldova faces hybrid threats ahead of its elections. Russia will use cash, content, coercion. The scent of fresh ink on diplomatic notes mixes with the metallic clang of armored police vehicles arriving in the capital. Leaders from France, Germany, Poland arrived in August, their footsteps echoing through stone squares, hoping to deter the looming darkness. Now the stakes rise. On September 22, Moldovan authorities arrested 74 suspects, each having received €400 for a covert mission. They traveled to Serbia under the guise of a pilgrimage, only to learn brutal crowd control tactics, firearm drills, and ways to resist arrest. Their faces, pale under harsh interrogation lights, recalled the cold stone of prison cells. Who recruited them? A network led by oligarch Elon Shore. The mastermind behind the 2014 bank fraud that siphoned $1 billion, and still pushing for a union with the Russian Federation. The investigation uncovered weapons, camouflage uniforms, forged passports, and ammunition hidden in basements that smelled of damp earth. For members of the Socialist Party, led by former President Igor Dodon, were among those seized, they now face up to 8 years behind bars. As the police combed through prisons and homes, every click of the metal door sounded like a countdown. Will the election survive this onslaught, or will Moldova slip into the Kremlin's grasp? Moldova's bid for EU membership hangs in the balance. It applied in March 2022, gained candidate status in June, and opened accession talks in December 2023. The European Council began intensive negotiations in June 2024, aiming for a 2030 target. Russia despises this progress. A Moldova inside the Union would strip Moscow of its foothold. The Kremlin's ultimate goal, to capture the nation through the ballot box, to turn it into a launchpad for hybrid attacks against Europe. As the September 28 parliamentary vote approaches, the question lingers like an unanswered echo in the night: can a small nation repel the tidal wave of foreign meddling and choose its own destiny? The answer may determine not only Moldova's future, but the security of an entire continent. Previously we examined how the pro-European Action and Solidarity bloc struggled to forge alliances, while the pro-Russian socialists under former President Igor Dodon shouted accusations of power-grabbing and foreign meddling. What if a shadowy militia was being groomed beyond Moldova's borders, ready to tip the balance on election day? Rumors swirled of men disappearing for a pilgrimage to Serbia, only to return with the scent of gun oil on their clothes and the cold bite of camouflage against their skin. Investigators uncovered 74 suspects, each pocketing €400 for training in crowd control tactics, firearm handling, and resistance to arrest. The operation, they say, was overseen by Russian operatives who watched from the shadows, whispering instructions through encrypted channels. But who exactly was pulling the strings behind the whispered orders, and how deep did the intrigue run? The answer would soon surface in the ruins of a dimly lit warehouse. In the wake of the Serbian raid, Moldovan authorities swept through more than 200 locations, from cramped cell blocks to silent forest hideouts, discovering piles of ammunition, forged passports, and uniforms that smelled of damp earth and steel. Among the seized documents was a ledger linking the infamous oligarch Ilan Shor, once at the heart of a $1 billion bank fraud, to a massive vote-buying scheme that funneled $39 million through a Russian state-owned bank to purchase ballots. Meanwhile, President Maya Sandu pressed on with the country's EU bid. A path opened in March 2022, granted candidate status in June 2022. And now entrenched in negotiations that aim for accession by 2030. Moscow, terrified of losing a potential foothold, had already ordered over 440 suspicious social media channels blocked, fearing they might leak the next move. Yet as the nation celebrated the arrest of the Serbian trainees, a new revelation emerged. Encrypted messages hinted at a second wave of operatives, this time poised to infiltrate polling stations on election day itself. Could the very act of voting become a battlefield of hidden agendas? The final twist would leave observers wondering whether the true enemy had already entered the ballot box. In a world where shadows twist and alliances shift, Moldova stands at a crucial crossroads. While this small Eastern European country is not part of the European Union or NATO, its fate hangs precariously in the balance. The Kremlin seeks to maintain its grip, reveling in the absence of support for Moldova. But the stakes have never been higher. If Moldova achieves EU membership, it could permanently shatter Russia's hopes of regaining control or restoring its Soviet-era influence. As the dust from elections starts to settle, dark clouds loom over Moldova. Moscow's maneuvers grow increasingly desperate. Reports reveal that Russian agents spark unrest and discontent among the people, inflicting wounds on national unity. Voters living abroad are targeted, urged to sway local polls in Russia's favor. Disinformation campaigns flood social media, poisoning public perception while the Kremlin claims innocence, insisting its hands are clean, despite the mountain of evidence to the contrary. Just as this political tempest brews, investigators in Moldova uncover an alarming plot. Over 440 TikTok channels are scrutinized and blocked, their tales of chaos silenced. But is it enough? With rumors swirling, the Kremlin's denial continues unabated. Could this denial be the mask hiding a more sinister intent? The waters grow murky as both local law enforcement and European allies desperately try to fend off Russia's insidious influence. With the elections looming, pressure mounts on the Moldovan government. President Maya Sandu stands firm, warning that the Kremlin's ambitions unfold beneath the surface. Plotting to capture her country through manipulation. This is not just about Moldova, it's about regional stability and international balance. The question spirals in the air: will Moldova stand strong, or will it succumb to the tides of external manipulation? As tension escalates, whispers of a vote-buying scheme resurface, involving a Russian oligarch and millions of dollars in bribes. Moldova teeters on the edge, straddling the line between independence and domination. What secrets lie in the shadows? How far will the Kremlin go to reclaim its lost influence? Only time will reveal whether Moldova can break free or if it will remain another pawn in a larger game. In the heart of Eastern Europe lies Moldova, a nation caught in a struggle for its identity and sovereignty. While Ukraine often appears as the primary target of Russian aggression, Moldova stands on the front line too, ensnared in a web of manipulation. The Kremlin's reach extends into the political fabric of this small nation, aiming to pull it back into its sphere of influence. But things took an unexpected turn. Just days before an important parliamentary election, Moldovan authorities made a shocking discovery. Authorities arrested 74 individuals suspected of plotting violent unrest. Imagine the thud of boots on the ground, the air thick with anticipation, as agents descended upon unsuspecting citizens, many of whom had been led to believe they were on a mere pilgrimage. Instead, they found themselves wrapped in a sinister scheme of manipulation backed by Russian operatives determined to sway the electoral outcome. Why would Moscow risk a move like this? The answer lies in the stakes of the upcoming election. With a pro-European president, Maya Sandu, steering Moldova toward the European Union, Russia has a vested interest in derailing that path. This election was not merely about politics, it represented Moldova's chance for a future away from Russian influence. Upon investigating, authorities uncovered troubling evidence: weapons, camouflage uniforms, and even secret communications on encrypted platforms were part of a meticulous plan to orchestrate chaos. Can you hear the crackling tension, the whispered conversations in dimly lit rooms, as conspirators plotted their moves? The arrested included members of political parties, revealing ties to an underbelly of corruption entwined with criminal networks. As the clock ticked down to Election Day on September 28, Moldova seemed to breathe in shared fear, yet also hope. President Sandu voiced her concerns before European lawmakers, exposing the Kremlin's goal to commandeer Moldova from within and use it against Ukraine. This isn't just a matter of national politics, it's about the future of Europe, with Moldova positioned precariously between alliances. With a target date set for EU accession negotiations, the stakes have never been higher. Moldova's government, echoing in the corridors of power, made every effort to resist this calculated interference. In just 1 month, they sought to block over 440 TikTok channels spreading disinformation, illustrating their determination amid a digital battleground. Despite Moscow's denials, the facts spoke louder. As the election loomed, revelations surfaced from Moldova's security and intelligence service about a sophisticated operation orchestrated by Russian forces to influence the electoral landscape. The details were staggering: a network extending deep into foreign soil. In the air hung the palpable tension of a society on the edge. Would Moldova emerge as a beacon of hope, or would it be swallowed whole by outside forces? The outcome rested in the hands of the people. And as the votes were cast, whispers of darker influences hung heavily in the air, reminding everyone that the struggle for Moldova's soul was far from over. Would history repeat itself? Or was this the moment Moldova finally broke free from the shadows of its past? Only time would tell. In the heart of Eastern Europe lies Moldova, a land caught in the crosshairs of geopolitical ambitions. While many view Ukraine as the headline act of Russian aggression, Moldova stands as a lesser-known battleground. Under Vladimir Putin's directive, the Kremlin's influence expands like shadowy tendrils reaching into the very soul of European politics. But what happens when one of Russia's nefarious plots crumbles under the light of scrutiny? In a shocking turn of events, Moldovan authorities uncovered a deep-rooted scheme, arresting 74 individuals who were poised to unleash chaos ahead of the upcoming elections. These suspects, allegedly trained by Russian operatives in distant Serbia, were groomed for violence, armed with the knowledge of crowd control and provocative tactics. Imagine the dark secret swirling in the air as Moldovan investigators closed in, revealing that deception cloaked these young recruits in the guise of a religious pilgrimage. With elections looming on September 28, the stakes could not be higher. The last parliamentary election saw the pro-European Action and Solidarity Party rout its pro-Russian opponents in a landslide that echoed hope across the nation. This time, however, the Kremlin's claws are gripping tighter, determined to swing the outcome back in its favor. Can Moldova's will withstand another onslaught? As the investigation deepens, the shady affiliations come to light. Ties to Ilan Shor, a fugitive oligarch with a history of scandal, emerge, revealing his hand in orchestrating political unrest. His connections extend like spider silk throughout the political web of Moldova. And to add a new layer of intrigue, reports indicated that Russian support flowed through various channels: cash carried directly from Moscow, bank transfers via Central Asian intermediaries, and even crypto payments obscured by fake donations. Even more alarming, the Kremlin sought to manipulate beliefs, allegedly sending hundreds of Moldovan priests to Moscow with promises of incentives to promote anti-European sentiments among the faithful. The tactics range from disinformation campaigns rife with manipulated media narratives to the covert use of religious influence, a strategic assault on the very heart of Moldovan society. But what could possibly lie ahead? As Moldova gears up for these crucial elections, questions swirl around the intentions of its neighbors and the determination of its people. Will their fight for sovereignty prevail, or will the Kremlin's grasp tighten around their homeland? As the countdown to the election ticks away, Moldova's destiny hangs precariously in the balance. In the shadow of Eastern Europe's turbulent landscape, a hidden battle plays out, one that goes far beyond the headlines of Ukraine. As Vladimir Putin pursues his ruthless agenda, his influence seeps insidiously into nations like Moldova, triggering fear and uncertainty. But here, a fierce leader named Maya Sandu stands resolute, determined to protect her country against the Kremlin's ominous grasp. A dangerous game as arrests unfolded in Moldova, they exposed a chilling scheme aimed at destabilization. Moldovan authorities apprehended dozens who were allegedly trained abroad to incite violence, with whispers of Russian instructors lingering in the air. Just imagine young citizens, coaxed under the guise of a simple pilgrimage, only to undergo military-style training on how to manipulate public gatherings. What kind of future does Russia envision for Moldova? The ripple effects each of these young individuals is a cog in a much larger scheme. Their actions, previously dismissed as mere vandalism against government buildings, are now part of a wider strategy. The evidence of Russian influence grows ever clearer each day, even as Moldova's police bravely confront these treacherous tactics. Maya Sandu has repeatedly sounded the alarm, warning that the Kremlin's designs could plunge her nation into chaos. Could Moldova be transformed into a launchpad for hybrid assaults against Ukraine, serving the ambitions of a ruthless regime? An unyielding resolve. The stakes shot up as Maya Sandu declared, "We witnessed unprecedented interference last year." It's apparent that Russia will intensify its attempts this time. The weight of her words hangs heavy with foreboding. Should Putin's machinations succeed, Moldova could easily be used as a strategic front against Ukraine, opening up a new chapter in the ongoing conflict. A staggering 760-mile border serves as a reminder of the potential threats lurking just beyond the immediate horizon. Will her nation endure? Preparing for battle, the apprehended individuals were allegedly armed with weapons of chaos, ammunition, uniforms, and a dangerous playbook. Moldova has become a theater, with whispers of disinformation campaigns echoing in the streets. As media outlets publish investigations revealing the Kremlin's extensive plans, one must wonder, how many more plots remain hidden from view? Every day counts as investigators brave the constant threat of exposure. A fight for sovereignty. As the election draws near, the air thickens with tension. President Sandu's vision for Moldova, aligned with Europe and devoid of Russian puppetry, teeters on a precipice. The Kremlin will stop at nothing to see her ousted. Their influence cannot be underestimated. It's not just about an election, it's about the very soul of a nation striving for independence. Will they protect their hard-won sovereignty, or will they fall prey to the devices of a power-hungry neighbor? The battle for Moldova is far from over, and its outcome hangs delicately in the balance. What if a seemingly unassuming country, positioned between the influences of East and West, became the front line of a covert battle? This is the stark reality Moldova faces as it braces for an election that could redefine its sovereignty. The nation acts as a shield for Ukraine, yet that very shield could turn into a weapon if Moscow succeeds in its ambitions. President Maya Sandu has raised alarms about an impending storm, claiming, "The Kremlin is funneling hundreds of millions of euros into schemes designed to sway votes on both sides of the Dnistru River and beyond." The atmosphere in Chisinau is thick with tension, where promises linger unfulfilled, and whispers of dissent swirl like cold winds rustling through market stalls. The stakes are alarming, as hundreds are reportedly incentivized to incite turmoil, vie for unrest, and spread fear. If Russia were to seize control over Moldova, would the entire region buckle beneath its weight? This sentiment resonates with journalists and EU officials who share President Sandu's concerns. Kaya Kallas noted, Moldova faces hybrid threats as the election nears. Russia will wield cash, content, and coercion. The scent of fresh ink on diplomatic correspondence mingles with the steely reverberation of armored police vehicles arriving in the capital. Leaders from France, Germany, and Poland walk the stone-paved squares of Chisinau, their footsteps echoing and resonating with hope against the encroaching darkness. As September 22 dawned, authorities apprehended 74 suspects rumored to have received €400 each for their covert endeavors. Having traveled to Serbia under the guise of a religious pilgrimage, they returned equipped with disconcerting knowledge, crowd control techniques, guidelines for firearm usage, and strategies for evading capture. The harsh fluorescent lights illuminated their frightened faces, reminiscent of the cold stone of prison cells. Who orchestrated this insidious network? The trail leads back to oligarch Elon Shore, infamous for masterminding a massive bank fraud that siphoned a staggering $1 billion from Moldova. Within the depths of hidden basements, authorities uncovered hordes of weapons, camouflage uniforms, counterfeit passports, and munitions with the acrid smell of damp earth clinging to them. Among the arrested were 4 members of the Socialist Party, led by former President Igor Dodon, now facing up to 8 years in prison for their roles in this conspiracy. Every metallic clank during police raids echoed ominously, akin to a clock ticking down to an uncertain fate. As shadows loom over the upcoming parliamentary elections, the question remains, can Moldova withstand this foreign interference and assert its destiny? The nation's aspiration for EU membership hangs by a thread, having applied in March 2022, secured candidate status by June, and commenced serious negotiation efforts in December 2023. The European Council ramped up discussions in June 2024, establishing a hopeful goal of joining by 2030. Russia, however, views this progress with disdain. A Moldova within the European Union would effectively erase its foothold. The Kremlin's ultimate ambition? To manipulate the nation into submission through the ballot box, turning it into a launchpad for hybrid attacks against the West. As Moldovans prepare to cast their votes on September 28, the unanswered question lingers in the air: can this small nation defy the tide of foreign manipulation and shape its own future? The answer could have far-reaching implications, influencing not just Moldova's destiny, but the security of the entire continent. In the recent Moldovan elections, the incumbent president, Maia Sandu, triumphed over her rival, Alexander Stoyanoglu, securing over 55% of the votes. Her administration has earned a reputation for being staunchly pro-European and against Russian influence in the region. Sandu has vocally condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine and positioned herself as an ally to the Ukrainian cause. Among her key focuses are anti-corruption reforms and fostering closer ties with the European Union, which have become pivotal tenets of her leadership. As the Moldovan populace prepared for another election on September 28, dark clouds loomed overhead. An alarming update from the Moldovan authorities revealed the arrest of 74 individuals suspected of plotting violent unrest. These suspects had allegedly traveled to Serbia for training under Russian instructors. They were schooled in various unsettling tactics, from crowd control to resisting arrest, with each participant reportedly receiving €400 for their involvement. However, their sinister plans unraveled due to a meticulous investigation by Moldova's Organized Crime Prosecutor's Office and General Police Inspectorate. Delving deeper, investigators uncovered that some individuals had been lured to Serbia under the guise of a harmless religious pilgrimage. Behind the facade, Russia's security services reportedly orchestrated this operation, with oversight from Alexandru Mustiata, head of Moldova's intelligence service. Moreover, pro-Russian oligarch Elon Shor, living in Russia after a significant bank fraud scandal that saw $1 billion vanish from Moldovan banks, was implicated as a key player. Shor previously founded the now-banned SOR party, dedicated to furthering Russian interests in Moldova, proving his intent to undermine the country's political stability even from abroad. As the elections approached, tensions escalated. With law enforcement uncovering explosive plots and foreign manipulation at work, Moldovans found themselves at a pivotal moment in their history, questioning who truly held power over their future. Could the Moldovan people resist the oppressive grip of external forces, or would their sovereignty slip away in the chaos? The outcome felt increasingly uncertain, echoing a nerve-wracking tension that lingered in the air like a storm about to break. In the heart of Eastern Europe lies Moldova, a nation grappling with unseen forces that shape its very future. While the war in Ukraine captures global attention, Moldova remains an under-the-radar battlefield of intrigue and political warfare. Vladimir Putin's Kremlin, with its cold, bureaucratic zeal, extends its influence over nations like Moldova, weaving a web of control and manipulation. But what unfolds when a dark plan is laid bare? Recently, Moldovan authorities made a startling discovery, arresting 74 individuals who were on the brink of igniting civil unrest ahead of critical elections. These suspects, allegedly trained in the shadows of Serbia by Russian operatives, had been groomed for conflict, armed with crowd control tactics and strategies for instigating violence. As investigators dug deeper, chilling details emerged. Many were lured under the pretense of a religious pilgrimage, a facade that made their recruitment insidiously deceptive. With the election set for September 28, the stakes are alarmingly high. In the last parliamentary vote, the pro-European Action and Solidarity Party delivered a crushing defeat to their pro-Russian adversaries. But this time, the Kremlin's grip appears more invasive, intent on shifting the tide back in their favor. Will the spirit of resilience in Moldova endure this renewed assault? As the investigation unfolds, links to Elon Shor, a fugitive oligarch notorious for his involvement in a significant banking scandal, come to light. His influence stretches through Moldova's political landscape like a sinister thread. The revelations grow darker still. Reports suggest that Russian funds have flowed through multiple channels, from cash directly transported from Moscow to clandestine cryptocurrency transactions masked as charitable donations. Even more concerning, it seems the Kremlin is manipulating spiritual leaders, allegedly dispatching hundreds of Moldovan priests to Moscow to sow anti-European sentiments among their congregations. This multifaceted strategy doesn't just employ disinformation campaigns filled with distorted media narratives, it also weaponizes religion, infiltrating the very fabric of Moldovan society. As the countdown to the election intensifies, uncertainty looms over Moldova's future. Will the nation's pursuit of sovereignty prevail against foreign manipulation, or will the Kremlin tighten its grip over this fragile republic? With every ticking second before the polls open, Moldova's destiny teeters on the edge of a knife, leaving the world to wonder what the outcome will be. In a world where shadows shift and alliances teeter, Moldova finds itself at a pivotal juncture. This small Eastern European nation, not yet a member of the European Union or NATO, hangs by a thread, teetering between independence and external control. With aspirations for EU membership, Moldova poses a significant threat to Russian ambitions. If it succeeds in joining, Russia's dreams of re-establishing its grasp over the region could vanish forever. As the aftermath of recent elections begins to unfold, ominous clouds gather above Moldova. Moscow's desperation grows palpable, stirring unrest among the populace. Reports indicate that Russian operatives aim to sow chaos, targeting voters abroad and urging them to tip local elections in Russia's favor. Social media becomes a battleground, inundated with disinformation, while the Kremlin plays the victim, denying involvement despite overwhelming evidence of its meddling. Amidst this brewing political storm, Moldovan authorities stumble upon a disturbing conspiracy. Recent investigations lead to the discovery that over 440 TikTok channels, which were spreading chaos-inducing narratives, have been thoroughly scrutinized and blocked. Yet, with so many threats surfacing, the question lingers, is this enough to thwart Russia's relentless manipulation? As whispers of deception echo throughout Moldova, the Kremlin's denials persist. Could this facade be hiding deeper, more sinister plans? As tensions mount, the local government faces an escalating crisis. Maia Sandu, the resolute Moldovan president, stands vigilant, forewarning against the Kremlin's tactics, which aim to ensnare her nation through the veils of deception and coercion. This struggle isn't merely about Moldova, it's about the broader implications for regional stability and the balance of power in Europe. Will Moldova rise resiliently against the waves of external interference, or will it drown in the tides of manipulation? As the political landscape grows murky, alarming allegations of a vote-buying scheme bubbles to the surface, involving a Russian oligarch and staggering amounts of illicit funds. The nation balances precariously on the edge of sovereignty, straddling an uncertain future. Secrets swirl in the shadows. How far will the Kremlin go to reassert its influence? Will Moldova emerge unscathed, or will it become another pawn in a much larger geopolitical game? Only time will unveil the truth in this high-stakes saga. Moldova, a tiny nation in Eastern Europe, finds itself in a fierce battle for identity and independence. While the world often focuses on Ukraine as the clear victim of Russian aggression, Moldova's plight is equally dire. The Kremlin's dark shadow looms over this land, desperately trying to pull it back into its orbit. But just days before a critical parliamentary election, the tides turn dramatically. Imagine the surreal stillness of the early morning, suddenly shattered by the thudding boots of law enforcement. In a shocking move, authorities arrested 74 individuals believed to be orchestrating a plot for violent unrest. Many had been lured under the guise of a harmless pilgrimage, only to unwittingly step into a chilling web of manipulation orchestrated by Russian operatives. What would drive Moscow to undertake such a risky operation? The answer is simple yet profound: the stakes of the upcoming election were monumental. With Maya Sandu at the helm, steering Moldova toward European Union membership, Russia was intent on derailing that crucial path forward. As authorities began investigating, unnerving discoveries came to light. Weapons, camouflage uniforms, and encrypted communications were part of a meticulous scheme designed to incite chaos. Can you feel the electric atmosphere in the dimly lit rooms where conspirators plotted their moves? The arrests, revealing connections to political parties and criminal networks, painted a picture of deep-seated corruption intertwined with power struggles. With the election date, September 28, drawing ever closer, Moldova exhaled a collective breath of anxiety mingled with fleeting hope. President Sandu stood before European lawmakers and sounded the alarm about the Kremlin's intentions to seize control of Moldova and leverage it against Ukraine. This battle was not simply about politics, it symbolized the potential future of Europe, with Moldova precariously positioned between alliances. As the nation prepared to confront this calculated interference, the government intensified its efforts. In an astonishing display of determination, officials sought to block over 440 TikTok channels that were spreading disinformation, acknowledging the battlefield had shifted to the digital realm. Despite Moscow's claims of innocence, the truth lingered like a foreboding cloud. As the election approached, new revelations emerged from Moldova's security and intelligence service, an intricate operation led by Russian forces, reaching across borders to sway the vote. The enormity of the plot hung heavily in the air, intensifying the society's sense of instability. Would Moldova break free from the grasp of outside forces, or would it falter yet again? The future of the nation rested in the hands of its people. And as the votes were cast, a suffocating silence enveloped the atmosphere, suggesting a showdown between past shadow and future hope. Would history's grim repetition unfold, or was this the decisive moment when Moldova triumphed over its tumultuous history? Only time would reveal the outcome of this fierce and emotional struggle for sovereignty, as the nation stood at the crossroads of existence, waiting for its fate to unfold. In a world on the brink, the battle for Moldova's future rages quietly beneath the surface of political power play. As pro-European forces strategize for change, whispers of a clandestine militia ready to tip the scales on election day emerge. These were not just rumors, they hinted at a troubling reality. A group of men, masked under the guise of religious pilgrimage, returned with the metallic scent of gun oil clinging to their clothes, evidence of secretive training beyond their borders. Moldovan authorities struck swiftly, uncovering 74 suspects who had each received €400 for training in dangerous tactics. This sinister operation, allegedly directed by Russian agents lurking in the shadows, showed how deep the roots of foreign interference had penetrated. Who orchestrated this shadowy scheme? And how far did the conspiracy extend beyond what met the eye? The truth would soon lay bare itself in a dimly lit warehouse, which investigators stormed after receiving intelligence from a recent raid in Serbia. Over 200 sites were scoured, exposing ammunition, forged passports, and uniforms thick with the smell of damp earth. Among the recovered items was a shocking ledger linking the notorious oligarch Elon Shore, previously embroiled in a billion-dollar bank heist, to a vote-buying operation that funneled an astounding $39 million through a Russian state bank to manipulate ballots. As President Maya Sandu persistently pursued Moldova's European Union aspirations, the stakes heightened. With candidacy achieved in June 2022, the timeline aimed for full membership by 2030. Russia, fearing its grip on Moldova slip, scrambled to block over 440 social media accounts, their platforms a potential threat to the Kremlin's plans. Amidst the turmoil and the celebration of thwarting an attempt at civil unrest, a sinister new development surfaced. Encrypted communications revealed the existence of a second wave of operatives waiting to strike on election day itself. Would the act of voting transform into a battleground, plagued with hidden agendas and deceit? The unexpected twist would soon lead observers to question if the true enemy already lurked within the very ballot box, waiting for the right moment to strike. As tension mounted, the air hung heavy with the smell of treachery and anticipation, setting the stage for a confrontation that would decisively shape Moldova's destiny. Could this election determine more than just political leadership? Could it render a nation into turmoil?